If you're on our email newsletter, which if you're not, you can get on that by going to makersplaybook.com/newsletter. But anyway, if you're on the email newsletter, then you already know there are a lot of exciting opportunities coming in 2023. I'm opening the doors back up to the Maker's Photography Styling System in January, as well as launching 2 new deep dive photography courses. One that's going to be all on using your regular camera, and one that is going to be all about lighting, regardless of what kind of camera you use. But along with all of that, I'm also joining 17 other makers and small business owners in the first ever Ceramicon, a brand new online summit for ceramicists. And spoiler alert, I'm not teaching photography. Crazy, right? Let me explain. In order to have kept my small business afloat for the last 12 years, I had to learn a lot of other skills that have absolutely nothing to do with crafting a well-exposed intentional photo. It has absolutely nothing to do with holding a camera or using lighting or doing anything you would probably associate with being a photographer. In fact, as you've heard from many past guests here on the podcast, once you go full-time with your craft, more often than not, you're not actually spending 100% of your time in that craft, which is usually the reason a lot of us go full-time in the first place. Instead, there's admin work and website updates and taxes and paperwork and customer service and, well, the list goes on, but I think you get the idea. So what I'm teaching this next February during the first ever Ceramicon is, if I had an audio track of a drum roll, I would insert it here. It's everyone's favorite subject. It's pricing. You know I am all about the tactical, tangible, task-oriented solutions. So I'm going to absolutely be giving you literal step-by-steps, super simple math, very simple things to do about setting up your pricing. But we're also going to talk about communicating that pricing and how it actually plays out in the real world. Because math is one thing and the real world is a whole nother thing, right? Anyway, I'm rambling on and on about myself here when the entire whole point of bringing up the subject of Ceramicon was to introduce you to this week's guest, the very creator of Ceramicon, Elisabeth Young. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. And it still sounds so surreal to say that.
Hi, I'm Kara, content creator and Facebook wrangler for Amico Brent, bringing you ideas and support for your creative adventures every day. This week's episode is brought to you by Amico Brent. Find your favorite Amico glaze at your local distributor. Happy glazing!
Now, on with the show. Welcome to the Maker's Playbook, the show where we talk all about what it's really like to make a living from the things you make. I'm your host, seasoned entrepreneur of 12 years, Rebecca Ikiskara. Hey, Elisabeth, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
I'm excited. I feel like this might be a little like inception-y of a conversation because we're going to talk on a podcast about another virtual experience. Whatever. It's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be fun. We're going to take a little left turn for people and give them some new content they've probably never anticipated. So
yeah.
Welcome to this special edition, everyone.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for all the questions that you have for me. I know we're having more of like an impromptu kind of chat.
Right.
So I'm just sitting over here. I'm like, oh man, what is she going to ask? What's she going to throw at me?
It's also what I'm sitting here thinking. Spoiler alert, everybody, the page is blank.
That's actually good. That actually makes me feel a little better. I'm like, okay, I can breathe a bit.
There are no pre-prepared questions. I do a very quick Google search on people, and then we just go for it.
Okay, awesome. Good.
So before we get ahead of ourselves, I've alluded to this virtual experience. How would you introduce yourself to the makers listening?
Yeah, for sure. Well, for the makers listening, my name is Elisabeth, and I'm the creator and founder of Ceramicon, which is a brand new online experience for ceramic artists and potters. I'm not sure, there doesn't seem to be, from what I can tell, one word to define everyone. So I've been using the two of those, like, collectively and interchangeably a lot. I originally hail from like a different creative world, which we can talk about that a little bit in the podcast, like my roots, why I have gotten into ceramics and why I did all of this. But I feel like that's the short, abbreviated version of just basically who I am.
And I'm totally going to ask you to dig into that background, but just to commiserate for a second, as two people trying to create virtual things for potters and or ceramicists and or makers to find us, I don't know what keyword to use. I don't know what people are putting into Google, because I agree. It's like, are you a potter? Are you a ceramicist? Did I just spell ceramicist correctly? After you look at it for, 50 million times, it's like, are there really that many vowels in it?
Yeah. No, it's so true, because I was having kind of this internal dilemma even when I started creating the lineup of artists participating, because I was thinking to myself, well, I don't want to call them potters. I don't want to call them ceramicists. I don't know which term they use. I don't want to say educator. That sounds so formal. So I just decided artist. I was like, I'm just going to call them artists. I feel like everyone kind of falls under that umbrella. But yeah, it's a tricky one for sure. It's thrown me a couple times.
Well, and as a elder millennial, whenever I use Potter, I wonder if I'm getting people who are actually searching for Harry Potter content and coming and finding us.
Oh my gosh, that's a good point too. Yeah, that's a really good point as well.
Which wouldn't be the worst cross section. I'm very okay with those two passions combining together, but I digress. Well, tell us a little bit about how the heck you have arrived to the audacious project of building a virtual conference. Because, girl, I just do single courses. Like, this is an undertaking.
I sometimes wonder the same question myself. I don't know if you are a Parks and Rec fan or familiar with that show at all, but my husband and I often joke that, like, I'm a big ideas person. So he would always tease me and be like, you just have to find your next harvest festival. And so I feel like that's what Ceramicon is to me, like this really big, crazy thing that I've decided to plan. But in terms of how I ended up here, I got my creative start with my own business back in the fall of 2016. That was when I went full time. And I was doing house portraits, wood signs, calligraphy, a lot of wedding related things, and that ended up turning into wedding invitations. And we all know how 2020 went in terms of weddings happening, which was like everything was canceled and there was just craziness.
From like a calligrapher's invitationer standpoint, I feel like it was kind of baller, because instead of one save the date, you had 3 or 4.
That is true, but oh man, to unravel all of that, I had so many friends who were so generous with redoing things for people, charging them less, like not even making money. And then, of course, as an artist, you have this problem of booking people in 2019, and then you're in 2021 and sometimes 2022, and prices for everything have gone up. So it was a hot mess, like Hot Mess Express. Basically, that was like a pivot point for me when I was just starting to think to myself, wow, I actually don't know if this is where I want to be long term, working on weddings. I actually went and got a job at Publix in the summer of 2020.
Which is a grocery store for everybody
who's not based in the Southeast. Yes, Publix is a grocery store.
Grocery store names are strangely very regional in the US, and like they're not a national thing. It's weird.
It's so funny. I could go on a tangent of like, I have lived so many different places, and like King Soopers in Denver, Colorado, Fred Meyer in Washington, in Seattle. And when I would tell people King Soopers, they would look at me like I grew a pair of horns. Like, that's really only a Colorado thing. So yes, I'm actually really glad you clarified. Publix, mainly like Georgia, Florida, maybe a couple other southeastern states. So I went to work at Publix because I felt like I was losing my mind. I think a lot of us felt that way. And my whole world kind of came to a stopping point. And the way that it ended up picking back up is I had a friend come to me because I had helped coordinate another summit in 2019 for stationers, for people in the paper world. And she came to me and she said, hey, how did you even do any of that? Because I'm curious about making an online course to teach letterpress. Can we just like have a call and you can talk me through some of this stuff? I'll pay you whatever. And I was like, hey, we're friends. Let's just talk. I'm happy to talk to you about this. Well, what started as like a friendly phone call turned into her basically asking for my help professionally and me basically pitching myself to partner with her. So then I find myself in this online education space, which I had kind of been in a little bit before, right? Because I had mentioned I had done this other summit. I do host a podcast with my business partner that I have for a different business. So I just fell into it even more, I guess. And I ended up partnering with 3 different women in the past year and a half to build out online courses for their topic of choice. So we had I did one about letterpress. I still work with her in some capacity. I did another one about wood signs with a different lady. And then I did one about basic like stationery level, because this is like the world that I kind of come from, right? Everyone's probably listening to this. They're like, who even is this girl? Like, why is she here? How did this happen? Don't worry, I'm getting to that, I promise.
Meanwhile, I'm nodding along like, yeah, this all sounds very normal. One, for someone who's experienced the wedding industry and is like, is this the life that I want?
Mm-hmm.
And 2, thinking about where you're at in your like self-employment, like where I was at when I was 5 years in was also very much in that place of maybe let me try this other thing because the first thing is not quite working, but there's something missing. Like, so 5 years in, I was like launching a separate brand. I was expanding to team members. I was like, yep, we are right on track.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad that you can kind of empathize a bit, because I do know a lot of people, especially when you're creative, you run your own business, it gives you the opportunity to pivot and constantly change and kind of do whatever the heck you want. You don't have rules that you're adhering to. But I don't like talking to non-self-employed people about my story, you know? Because if you are, a lot of my friends who are 9 to 5, it is harder to understand sometimes of like, so wait, how do you make a living? Everyone always has that question.
I get how many businesses do you?
I know. I'm right there with you. Like the LLCs, I'm a domain hoarder. The amount of things I have on GoDaddy that I have bought over the years, it's hilarious. An idea person. I feel like we're similar.
Okay, I'm going to ask one question, then we will get back to how the heck we've arrived to Ceramicon. But I was once on a customer service chat with GoDaddy, and the person was clearly looking at the number of domains I owned and was like, do you want to clean this up at all? Are you going to make all of these into websites? I was like, no, it's fine. It's good.
Once again, like, we could probably have a whole episode of us just going through and saying, like, here's all the domains I bought of what I thought I'd do with them. I'll come back if you want.
This is an offshoot podcast that I think is genius.
Okay. Because I think it would be really funny. I actually think there needs to be some sort of like support club for people like us who are constantly purchasing domain names for different ideas.
Domain names anonymous. All right.
Exactly. I know a couple other that I could join to the club already, so we're not alone. Anyways,
I love
obviously
this so
we digress.
All that to say, this is all very normal for people that think we're not normal. This, to me, is very normal.
Okay. I'm glad that you think that. It is reassuring. So anyhow, I'm working on online courses with other people, and in the back of my mind, I'm always kind of thinking to myself, if I did some sort of like education thing again where I'm in charge of planning it, like I'm not working on it for someone else, what would that be? And this is actually an idea that's probably like more than a year in the making, if I had to guess, because I always knew I wanted to do another thing that was kind of like summit based. I'm really like obsessed with the idea of community and bringing people together because there's so much value in that. And I just didn't really know what that was. So like cut to the end of 2021, so like a year ago. And I'm like, man, 2022 is going to be my first full year without any wedding anything, because I still was kind of like tying up some loose ends, right, from clients that I'm still doing projects with and other things I had gotten involved in previously before I knew that I wanted to kind of leave.
and contracts that are 2 years long.
So much stuff. We'll have to sidebar about this later after this call because I do want to know about your wedding stuff.
We'll pour cocktails and then we'll have that conversation.
Okay, that sounds good. That's how I feel like sometimes too. So I knew that I was in a place where I needed something creative that I actually wasn't necessarily good at. I became like really obsessed with this idea of, well, what do I want to get my hands on next that I just might be bad at? Because I think that would be good for me. And what do I want to do that I'm not constantly sharing with everyone? Because I was feeling exhausted by, you know how social media is. It can feel like a battle and it's really draining. And I was like, I just want to do something for myself. I just want to learn something new, try something different. I'm just going to go basically dive right in. And then Cara Lee Ford, I saw her book on Instagram. I don't know how. I don't know if I had ended up following her at some point. And I was like, you know what? That sounds really interesting. This sounds really cool. I'm going to buy her book. And I think this will be my thing for 2022, like teaching myself some pottery, some ceramics. So I was like that person who a lot of people say, hey, like maybe take a couple lessons before you get a wheel in a kiln. And I was like, it's January, I'm getting a wheel in a kiln.
You made an entire home studio, more or less. Had the book even arrived? Had you opened it?
It all happened at once. And I did take a class in middle school, right? I think my dad
That
still
doesn't
has
count.
some of my, it doesn't count.
I mean, it does, but
I have touched clay at some point in my life and like at least knew I enjoyed that to some degree, I guess, or had fun in that class. Well, I want to say that the pottery wheel probably came like almost immediately right after the book because that was like the first week of January. And then by the end of January, I had found a kiln on Facebook Marketplace. It's an old L&L Econo kiln, basically. It's hot kilns today, but it's their 80s version of a manual. So a kiln sitter, basically.
that makes me feel a little bit better because I was like, hold up, girlfriend. You bought a brand new wheel and a brand new kiln and you like, we need to sidebar about whatever like
Priorities I have.
No, I was like, I need to learn about funding from you. Like, how is this?
Yeah, no, I actually managed to keep, from a pottery perspective, I would say it's relatively impressive that everything cost me under $1,000, I guess.
That's awesome.
Which is very good. I was just picky and I just kind of kept looking and I think I really got lucky with some of my timing. So I have been doing pottery as a hobby the whole year and just having fun with it, not really following a ton of other ceramic artists at first. And then I really started to get into it and follow more people. And then the algorithm was proving that because it kept referring more potters and ceramicists to me. And then I started thinking...
Spoiler to everyone, the algorithm works. Hate to break it to you.
It's very, very sneaky. So anyways, I just kind of went down the rabbit hole, and this was something that I was pursuing very much on my own and not sharing a lot about on social media. I told people, hey, I'm picking up pottery, but I'm doing this for myself. I'm not out here to show off my work or sell my work, and I just don't think that's going to be a place that I get to. However, as like a systems and idea person, of course, I'm looking into, well, what is out there in terms of education for potters and ceramicists? Of course, there's a couple big organizations that exist already that have been doing things for a long time, but I just wasn't seeing something that was kind of a summit format like this. I do feel that Ceramicon is a little different from some of the other education in the way that it is set up, in the way that I'm putting it together, in the way that artists get paid for selling tickets and all of these things. And I was like, well, why the frick not? Like, I should just try. Like, why wouldn't I? So the fact that I am here and now it's a living, breathing thing because there's 18 of you that said yes to me is really surreal. I actually am kind of like pinching myself a lot because I'm like, did this actually happen? Because I just out of the blue just started emailing people and asking them like, do you want to do this? And I'm so sorry if you're somebody that got like 7 emails from me because my follow-up was intense. That's the best way I can explain it. I know it doesn't sound very nonlinear, but yeah, as my husband would joke, he's like, you found your next harvest festival. Like, this is something that lights you up and makes you really excited. And I want it to be a thing that happens again and again. Like, I don't want it to be one and done. I would love to be able to host it each year with a different group of artists. So yeah.
That's amazing. I also think it's really interesting that your perspective as someone who is brand new and trying to compile together education for people that are brand new is going to bring a different place to it than maybe, I don't know, somebody who's been to NCECA in person and spoken there, or has a background in higher education and is trying to kind of fill that gap, or any other version, any other person who's pulling something together. It just is going to look different. And your specific background in being like, well, here we go. That's going to be awesome. It's just going to bring a unique experience to people who are maybe in the very, very similar shoes to you. I feel like you can really speak to other makers and potters and ceramicists, whatever word we're going to use, for, hey, I'm trying to learn this too. And that's why, these people are here to talk to you.
I'm not going to lie. Like, when I was starting to kind of do research about everything, I did feel like there was an element of some other education resources that can feel a little intimidating. I actually ended up with some of the websites and was thinking to myself, I'm not going to name names, obviously, but I was like, I'm not sure where to start, or wow, that seems like way more advanced than what I need. And obviously I'm using, I'm looking up some things on YouTube because that's a really great resource for people getting started. But I was like, how can we bring some of that together in a more formal format, if you will? And I just want it to be very welcoming and simple and easy to understand, of like, hey, here's these classes. You pay your ticket, you get access to all of them. There's 18, there's not 1,000, because I think that's really overwhelming too. Of like, well, if I get access to 1,000 classes, where would I start? So this has such a good mix of some beginning topics. I know Tim C is teaching throwing off the hump and workflow with that, which is a little more advanced. And then some people are talking about some business topics, which I think is an awesome kind of twist as well. So I feel like we have a little bit of sprinkle of kind of everything. And I'm really happy with how the selection of everything turned out. I feel so lucky.
Well, I know from my perspective, and part of this comes from the skepticism of the wedding industry, when you hear from somebody kind of building something, and we could dive down for hours the entire online education world, and there are a lot of things wrong with it. Even though I'm now a part of it, there's still a lot of things from a business model standpoint that is really not good and takes advantage of people and bad marketing and all of this type of rather manipulative marketing. But that's a whole different thing. And so I always have my, skepticism glasses. That's not the metaphor I was looking for.
No, but I know exactly what you mean. It's the little bit of that cynical, what is happening here?
Right. Who is this and how are they trying to make a buck? Because also, at the end of the day, businesses have to make money. We all have to pay our mortgage in one way or another. But there's ways to do it that is transparent and in alignment with my own values and morals. And so then when I got your press kit and I was reading it, I was like, oh, she's actually thought about the artists contributing their time to this.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I'm so glad that was your reaction, because that's something I think about all the time. Trust me. It's probably the number one thing that I don't want to say plagues me, but that I have conversations with my husband about a lot. Because I'm like, how do I make sure that this is balanced, or this is easy to understand? I don't want to complicate it for people who are part of it. I want everyone to make money from it, because I think it's personally an easy sell. Maybe that's just my opinion, but I'm like, if you refer some of your audience to this and you get that commission cut, which is for artists 60%, that was really important to me, that it wasn't 50-50. I felt very passionate about artists getting 60.
We're used to it being the other way around, right? We're used to it being 40, 60 or less, frankly. And so, yeah, that's magical.
Yeah, I think you're right. When you are intentional about your business model and you can align it with your goals and with what your hopes and dreams are for everyone else, there's a way to make sure that is balanced, and I don't know, that there's integrity behind it. And I really do hope that people can at least hopefully feel that, because it is something I think about for sure. I know I did have people ask me, they're like, who are you?
Where did you come from?
What? That's totally fair. And it's totally completely fair. And I just have to give like a lovely shout out to Sherrod, because he's the first person who said yes to me, and he actually initiated a phone call with me. We had a Google Meet together, and he asked me those, not, the hardball questions like, hey, be straight up with me. Here's the questions I have for you. What are you thinking about all of this? And I was so thankful he even gave me the time of day, because he didn't have to do that. He did not have to take the time out of his day to do that. And then when he said yes and he was on board and he started reaching out to other people, I was like, what did I do to deserve you? You were quite honestly so lovely. Thank you so much for being like just as excited about this as I am.
I should forward you the email he sent to me that basically went to bat for you to be like, no, she's doing this right. Like, she's got her back. Like, it's great. He's just the loveliest. He's the loveliest.
I'm like blushing over here. I know you guys who are listening can't see me, but yeah, it's hard for me to stop smiling when I talk about Ceramicon, because it gives me a lot of joy and a lot of life. And I was just talking to a friend last night where she's also working on an online education thing for her own business. And she said, this makes me so excited and it gives me so much joy that if it is a flop, it won't even matter. And I was like, that's honestly kind of how like I feel, because I would rather say at the end of the day, I gave it my best and I tried and I really put myself out there to do something new and different, and maybe to have that flop than to just sit back and to never do anything,
Well, and also, how are we even defining success versus flop, right? Because like, yes, there's the monetary side of it. But like for me with our community, which is our paid online membership, most people would look at that business model as like, oh, you're aiming for thousands of people. And to your point, there are other places on the internet where there are already thousands of makers in a place. And for me, that's not the goal. That's never going to be the goal, because I want it to be quality over quantity. So if there's like, my goal for next year is 100 members. Right? Because there's obviously benefit in growing a group in terms of having a diverse group of voices and having deeper depth of conversation, because you have a variety of experience and life experiences and making experiences and all of this. So that's the like underlying current of growth, as opposed to I need to hit 2,000 members in order to have whatever salary goal or something. I don't know. And I feel like that's, maybe I'm putting words into your mouth, but that's immediately what I was thinking of when you were talking about like, yes, there are other online education platforms for ceramicists, but when you log onto a place and scroll through pages and pages of presentations and you don't know where to start, some people might see a $200 ticket for 2,000 presentations as being a steal. Whereas if I get so overwhelmed and don't watch any, then I've just lost $200, as opposed to like, okay, 18 thought through, all of us have given our pitch to you as far as what each person is speaking about. So there's diversity of education. You can watch all of that in a reasonable amount of time. So hopefully people will actually watch every single lesson, as opposed to like, oh, I paid the $200 to watch the one person's class that I wanted and that was it. Like, I don't think that's going to happen with Ceramicon.
Yeah, I really don't want that to happen. And if it does happen, it happens. But I would really hope that people see that as something exciting, that it's like, hey, if I do every other day, even I just watch one, then within like a month and a half, I've gotten through all of this really valuable content. So I have a whole email drip that'll go out after people sign up and after the content drops. And we can talk about timelines for everything too. But when the content drops, basically every 2 or 3 days, I'm going to have an email go out that's like, hey, don't forget to watch Sherrod's session. Don't forget to watch Rebecca's session. Like, here's the direct link to that page. Log in and set aside 30 minutes. All of the sessions, I've been asking for people to have them around 30 to 45 minutes. So you can pack in a lot of information, but keep that under an hour as well, because that also makes it a little easier for people to digest. But it's a little longer than just like 10 minutes, I guess.
You can basically replace like one Netflix show and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all directly on the Ceramicon website. I'm sure, Rebecca, you have a lot of information and research you've done about like hosting, where you can host online content, right? So there's all these different places that you can host courses. There's like Kajabi or Teachable, Teachery, like I don't even know. There's so many different things. And I feel very passionate about it. It's always tough leaving a website, and especially if you're not like super tech savvy, it's nice to just have a login button on that website. And I'm like a systems minded person. So I'm really excited that the content will actually live on the website on the back end under protected member pages. So
we're going to have to talk about that.
Yeah.
We would bored everyone to tears on this episode, so we won't talk about it now, but I'm definitely going to talk to you about that.
Yes, I'd love to tell you all the things. Yeah, I'm a big systems-minded person. It is funny. I do feel like I'm a little bit of a rarity when it comes to creatives because, yeah, I think you're kind of like in that boat with me because you realize like, oh, man, I have a flair for creativity, but I have this really linear part of my brain as well that just like understands it's a puzzle. It's kind of like a puzzle brain. I'm assuming you like to sit down and do like jigsaw puzzles too, because I'm really into that. I don't know. I can be making an assumption, but
the problem is I don't do them because I get so annoyed that I can't complete it in one sitting. And so I don't.
Because you're efficient.
Because I'm let's call it efficient. Let's go with that. That's a positive word for you.
Yeah, but it's just that it's the type of mind that likes clicking, like making sure the gears click together and they all turn at once. Like that you get joy from that.
And also understanding that it impacts someone's experience and it impacts the value that they're going to get out of paying to come learn from people if it's easy, if it's accessible, if it's all of the things, that all of those things matter to a level. So, well, since we're talking about the tech and the nitty gritty, let's explain to everybody what the heck Ceramicon actually is. Because we've used Summit, we've used virtual experience, but let's break that down into literally kind of the play-by-play of how it's going to work.
Yeah, for sure. I do think it's tough. This goes back to kind of like semantics again, right? With deciding what word you're going to use. But when I did the FAQ post the other day on the Instagram account, I did use the word summit because I think that's overall the best way to explain it. Because it's not a course. Like a course is one topic in a bunch of lessons about one topic. And it's not a conference either. I feel like conference has the connotation sometimes of like being in person. So something about a summit makes the most sense because you have 18 people participating and they're all teaching a different topic. However, we have different buckets. Some of them are business related. Some of them are the actual how-to creative related. But the way that it is going to work is that there's an early bird registration at the end of January from January 23rd to 28th. And that's when the pricing is going to be the best. It's going to be $100 off the normal pricing. And people, if they sign up during that week, they are going to have to wait till February 20th for all the content to drop. But you're getting a discount, basically. So it kind of, 3 weeks isn't, or whatever it ends up being, is not too long of a wait. And everything will be on the back end of your student portal. So as soon as you buy your ticket and sign up, you're going to be taken to a homepage on the back end that's like, hey, here's your home base. Here's all the things you need to know. Here's the links for where you can go. I'm also working on finding sponsors right now. So there's probably going to be stuff from them on the back end of the site too. Like if they're offering, I would love to get some companies offering like a first time coupon code for people. We'll see. I'm like still working some of those details out.
We're putting it out in the universe. This will air next week. So let's just see where it goes.
And then from there, you'll be automatically added to the email list when you become a student, and you'll continue to get prompts that way. Like, hey, the content has dropped. Hey, here's where you can go to watch it. And each lesson has a comment section. So that way, if people want to drop questions, they can. And educators or artists, because that's the term we're using here, the artists are able to partner with me to do a live Q&A session if they want to offer that as an added piece. So I do think we'll get a few people who are offering that, which will be really cool to be able to sign up and be part of those. But that is a little bit of, I think, the like base nitty gritty in terms of like what people actually need to know. There will be another official registration in February, so February 20th to 25th, and that'll be the full price at $347. So that's why it's important to get in earlier. And the reason that these weeks are like closed, like it's not just a sign up whenever type of thing, is because I'm a firm believer in being very intentional with the people who sign up and basically are willing to pay for the content that's offered to make sure that they have their needs met, that the tech is working for them, that they're asking the questions that they have and getting those questions answered. And it makes more sense, honestly, not only from that perspective and like a business model, to really be able to focus on that group of people at once. And then, like I said, if this is something that happens again next year, the slate would be cleaned for a new round of people. But if you sign up, you get the content for 2 years. So you have plenty of time to watch all of it. I hope I'm not like just going off the rails now and adding way too much information that people don't need.
No, that last bit was the only thing I was gonna call out specifically, because I could hear people thinking through like, okay, that sounds great, but how long do I have time to watch? So they've got 2 years. And I also actually love that you're putting a limit on the time. And I know that probably sounds silly to people. Number one, 2 years is a long amount of time. 18 hours of content in 2 years, you should be able to get done. If you just watch one lesson a month, you'll still have 6 months to spare.
Yep.
So that's awesome. But there's such a trend in online education. And I fell subject to this in the very beginning, and I have since kind of walked it back a little bit, because every course I had ever taken immediately defaults to lifetime. And there's two pieces to that I've realized now that I'm on, this side of the microphone. Number one, lifetime access ultimately means that you just never actually get it done. Like,
I know. I kind of agree. I'm so glad you're bringing this up. I completely agree. You're like living in my brain.
And I'm going to admit something that is not an attractive thing to admit right now. I have spent thousands of dollars in online education. Plural. Like, yes, a course for $250 or $350, money is relative. So that can be expensive depending on anybody's life. And that's definitely a dollar amount that I don't take lightly. I have to think about it before. I don't just like drop the credit card immediately, unless it's the grocery store.
Or Target, let's be honest.
I almost was going to say Target, and I switched to grocery store because it felt better. But yeah, that's actually...
No, it's Target. That was me last night, for real.
But... So, like, as someone who has spent an obnoxious amount of money on online education, I can tell you on one hand the number of the courses I've actually finished. And it's not a full hand. It's not 5. And so I think that it's actually serving people better to give a deadline, because in a way, from my perspective, I want to protect their investment. I want to protect the money they've spent, to be like, I want you to get the value. You've given me money. I want you to have the education side of it. And so that deadline kind of, I think humans by nature, we all have to have deadlines. Otherwise, nothing gets done. It's why my laundry sits in a basket unfolded for a week, because I don't have a deadline for it. It's fine.
It's fine. It'll get done. That's why I don't unload the dishwasher for 3 days. However long. You start pulling things out of the clean dishwasher and you're like, I'll just unload it later. I don't need to do that.
And then it is unloaded because the sink is now full and it just goes back in.
Yeah, it's so true.
So I think, like, just for anybody who is used to hearing that lifetime kind of access guarantee, it's something that I have realized over the past couple of years. It's not serving the people actually paying for the courses. And also, it's not necessarily a viable business model unless you are one of these massive education platforms or kind of massive names out there that teach, like, I'm thinking of like Amy Porterfield and whatever, like the huge quote unquote mega stars of the online education space, who are charging thousands of dollars for one course and who have a team of 12 people. Like, yeah, if I had 12 full-time employees, then sure, lifetime access, no big deal. But, we're not even close.
No, we're not even close. And something that I have been asking myself, because I have definitely, like, when I've been setting up courses for people, that's normally, it has kind of become that status quo of like, oh, we'll just offer lifetime access. But if you're really thinking about it, the other day I was like sitting on the couch And I was like, does this mean when I'm 80, I'm still trying to give people access to the content?
Right. And I think the other side of it, I was having this conversation with a few other makers who are considering getting into education, because the platform that I use has a way now where I could potentially offer those other makers space to host what they want to teach, which I'm super excited about because you and I both have the same value of community. So I think it's a really exciting possibility. It's just a possibility right now, guys. Anybody listening, don't at me with like, hey, how can I get this? Like, I don't know yet. But because all of these platforms also have a cost, like Mighty Networks, Thinkific, Kajabi. Kajabi is like crazy expensive.
Kajabi is very expensive. Yeah.
It's insane. And so again, we're talking thousands of dollars that are worth it, but lifetime access means, in 20 years, life presumably will have changed. And who knows if that's even the best platform anymore? Who knows if, I don't know, people are consuming content in holograms at that point? Like, who knows?
Yeah, it's true.
It's just not sustainable.
It's not. Even with like how much our lives have changed the past 20 years and what technology was in 2000 versus what it is today. And that's just only a segment of our life. Things will exponentially continue to change. Like technology is changing faster than the human mind is capable of understanding it, which is actually wild. Like, this is just honest truth. No human can accurately predict 20 years into the future. It's very easy for me to say, like, what I'm going to be doing a year from now, what the world might be like a year from now. But 20 years, I'm probably going to get that wrong every time. I can make as many predictions as I want, and I'm going to get it wrong. So,
and hopefully I get it wrong because frankly, like,
I don't want to know.
As much as I'm over here being a creative professional, my imagination is not really that impressive. And I think sometimes life surprises me for the better.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think we're not capable of imagining the true possibilities. So
we just got very existential when it comes to online education platforms.
This conversation has taken a couple different turns that people are kind of probably going to be like, wow, you guys. But it all goes hand in hand. Like at the end of the day, all the things that you think about, I'm glad we're talking about it, because this is when you organize something like this, any type of online education, these are the things that keep me awake at night. Like nobody else is thinking about, but I am, right? Like, will the affiliate links work? Will they track people properly? I want to make sure that I'm paying the artists like what they earn for getting people to buy tickets. Like, those are the things that keep me awake, that I'm so passionate about, that all of it works correctly and that it's a good experience for people.
Well, what have you been thinking about, or what do you know is happening with Ceramicon that we have not touched upon for people? And I'm going to just, while you think about that, I'm just going to summarize, because I know a lot of people are listening, half listening with their hands covered in mud, as we would like to be. So there are 18 artists who are speaking on a host of different subjects. They're all going to be less than an hour of pre-recorded. You can watch whenever you want, because I know we have people from all over the world that listen to the podcast, so it's nothing as live. You can watch when you want, but you still can also comment on the material. So if you have questions, things like that, there's some support already built in. And they have access for 2 years.
Yeah, that sounds exactly right. With early bird registration coming up at the end of January and official registration with the content dropping at the end of February. And all of these dates are outlined on ceramicon.co. I feel like I've done a relatively good job of keeping the site pretty simple, straightforward, easy to find information and to understand. But you can always email us with questions that you have if you do want additional support, or send us a DM on Instagram. It's also ceramicon.co on Instagram. And Rebecca, you better be sharing your links. I sure hope. Like, we're talking about this, so share your affiliate link and like your landing page and all of that for people.
Yep. So that's the really cool thing that you're doing. And this is going to be for any artist, like we mentioned Sharad, who was, I'm going to have to pull up his episode number, previous episode that he was on the podcast, because if I tried to say, oh, Sharad on number, I have no idea what number it was. It was last year sometime. We had a great time. So people should listen to that episode. But for any of the artists that are speaking, what you have done on our end is set up special links with each of our bios. So when somebody clicks that link, even if they decide, what is it, like a month, like 30 days?
Yeah. So there's like the affiliate link tracking for people, which is through your affiliate account. But you're right. Those landing pages, if people join your wait list, their name is tagged with your name, essentially. So that's also, I've done like so many ways to track things, you guys. I'm so obsessive. And I actually think I'm probably confusing some of the artists with it. So I feel a little bad.
I love it. I love it because I've participated in affiliate things before, and it's kind of impossible because it's like, use this link. Any of us who know anything about marketing know that the first time someone visits a site, they don't necessarily take an action. You don't hear about something for the very first time and then say, okay, cool, here's my credit card. Like, no, you hear about it, you think, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then it comes up in front of you again. And that time, maybe you're like, oh, actually, I remember this. I want to learn more. So now I'm going to put my email in this little waitlist box. But I still haven't committed to actually purchasing anything. And then you hear about it a couple more times, and then maybe you decide to buy. So you've really thought about that reality for us that are contributing to make sure that like that reality is reflected in how the tickets actually work when it comes to the affiliate system, which I just think is super respectful of the people participating.
Thank you so much. Like I said, that is one of those things that I've had so many conversations with my husband about as I'm just trying to brainstorm. And I want like a fail safe, right? So like, okay, but if the link doesn't work, like how can I make sure that I know this person came because she heard from Rebecca? So yeah, actually, if you guys end up on the website and you click the waitlist button, you're actually going to see an explanation that asks you to go to an artist page and sign up on one of their waitlists to have their name added. There's not a generic waitlist because I want people coming through the artist. That's what I want to happen.
That was the thing that for me put it over the top, because it's one thing to be like, cool, here's your affiliate link. If people happen to use this, then you get a cut, even though there's totally a way for them to purchase it without using it. It's not even possible. You didn't even make it an option.
No, I didn't. I wanted people to like, yeah, if they're on that wait list and there are people like word of mouth is still a thing that might come through and purchase that way, but I will still follow up with those people. That is my plan. Like people who come through and are immediately, it's not obvious, I will ask them, did you come through with somebody and would you like to apply this ticket to someone? It's that important to me. It's like part of my integrity. I wouldn't be able to like operate the event or plan the event otherwise because like I myself am a creative, and even though the ceramics community wasn't my original home, I understand the value in the time that people put in as artists to their craft. So yeah, I'm not here to fool around basically. I'm like taking it pretty seriously.
That's awesome. Well, getting back to ceramics and where you're at, what have you been making? What are you learning right now in this brand new home studio? How many dog-eared pages of Kara's book are we, where are we at?
Actually, let's say like mud splattered, because when it's like opened and I like put my like hands on it, it's like kind of a little grimy now.
We should reach out to the publisher and be like, your version 2 should probably be printed on like water safe paper.
Basically, I actually bought a thermocouple recently because like I said, my baby kiln is from the 80s and doesn't have any of that fancy tech stuff. So doing my first kiln run actually just last weekend and being able to see the temperature was the coolest thing. I have been using cones. I think like the technicality... Yes, and I will continue, but it was cool doing my first few firings with just cones. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to get a thermocouple because I want to start a kiln log to be able to write the temperatures down, because that's something that obviously is talked about in Kara's book. So yeah, I think learning a little bit more about my kiln, and I would like to learn more about glazes because I am just using what I like to call our like kindergarten level glazes that you
commercial glazes.
Yeah, commercial glazes that you paint. I think it's Mako. Am I saying that brand right? Yep, that you paint right on there. And so I've been having fun and experimenting a lot.
This is the point in the podcast where I interrupt and mention Amico is a great option since they sponsor the podcast.
Oh, amazing.
So I'll send you a link. I'll send you a link later.
Please send me one. Yeah, and so here's what is so exciting to me about ceramics, especially coming from the wedding world. When you're doing wedding invitations, it's very formulaic. You can play a lot with the appearance of it, how you maybe make it look, incorporate color, incorporate design. At the end of the day, there's still a formula. And actually, I was starting to get like really annoyed. And then you see a lot of people in that industry, which like copying is a big problem. I will never downplay that at all. But people being like ripped off my invitation design. And I'm like, but also there's only so many ways to do one. Oh, I like don't know what to tell you. It's like,
especially when everyone wants pink and blush letterpressed with this font and this.
Yeah. And so it started feeling almost repetitive. And that's why ceramics felt so exciting. There are no limits. Like the people that I follow and what you all are able to create is amazing. It's like the sky is the limit. So it's been fun for me to really experiment, to kind of be like, what do I gravitate towards? I made a planter. The thing I'm most proud of is I made a planter that I was able to glaze it so it looks like a sunset. And I was like, oh, I like this, like this feels like kind of true to myself. But like I said, my goal with pottery is just my hobby to enjoy. I made a lot of gifts for people this year. I just sent out a ton of them in the mail earlier today. And I still don't continue to like post a ton of my own work. Like you see a little bit of it on ceramicon.co because Instagram wants to see reels. So obviously I'm going to give them a little bit of what they want to see. And so you might see some of my oopses or mistakes or pieces of work incorporated into those. But otherwise, I still don't have big plans to share my work or commercialize my work in any way. I hope I can just continue to keep it fun and kind of a just for me thing. And then I can focus on obviously letting everyone else really excel at the teaching portion in Ceramicon. Because like, obviously I'm nowhere near qualified. I would never.
I think that's such a helpful and kind of refreshing perspective also, because for so many of us, and especially for me, when I first got into ceramics, because I'm self-employed, I kind of defaulted really quickly and way too early on to being like, oh yeah, I can totally sell. Like somebody asking me, can you make this? I want to buy something from you to give to my mom for Mother's Day or whatever. And I was like, oh yeah, I can totally do that. And I said yes way too early.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, as you gain an appreciation for the craft and understand just how much it takes to like really make something at a refined level, it's hard to pull back from selling things, but also in some ways, like for me, it gives me so much of the freedom to learn and become better and to respect the craft in a different way, which, with how easy Instagram and Etsy makes kind of creating a little side hustle business, that can be really hard to say no to. So
yeah, it can be hard to say no to. And I'm trying to be very intentional on keeping that boundary in place for myself. If you see a piece of my work, it's most likely because I texted it to you directly. And if you get one in person, it's most likely because it's a gift, because I don't want to sell it. There is something really fun about being able to dive into something like this and feel completely creatively inspired again in a different way. So yeah, I like y'all. So thanks for letting me be a part of your world.
It is such a lovely world. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We're going to have those cocktails some point, because it's so many people talk about ceramics being therapy. And I think for you and I, coming from the event industry, that could probably not be a more true comparison.
Definitely. Yeah. The unfortunate thing was that I was kind of like, there's a lot of lovely people. But as I was continuing to work my way up, I was like, but do I like these people as I work my way up and things get more intense? I don't know if I do. Yeah.
It's a rough industry. For anybody who has worked, the thing I can give a likeness to for people who are like, I don't know what you mean. Anybody who has worked in restaurants or food service at any level. This could have been like being a server when you were in high school or college or as an adult, or being, more advanced in that. Like that is the most similar comparison, especially for the time demand between work and personal life, right? Like nobody thinks about, for people who are passionate about food and want to be chefs, they're basically saying yes to working every Friday and Saturday for the rest of their life. And that's always fun.
No, it's not always fun, that's for sure. Yeah, we can definitely grab cocktails and talk about that. I will tell you that I was a dum-dum and didn't bring my charger downstairs with me. So my Mac is getting close to dying, but I do think we're close to wrapping up.
It's really funny because what people don't know is I mentioned a story about someone's laptop dying on a podcast recording. And this is full circle now. That's right. That's the wrap up.
That's the wrap up, you guys. Use Rebecca's link because she is so kind to host me today and to talk about Ceramicon. And yes, please do that.
I will put it in the show notes. So whatever app people are listening to, they can just click right there, or it will be at makersplaybook.com/podcast. And also come check you out. Instagram is at ceramicon.co.
Yep. And that's actually happens to be the website. We're not a .com, we're a .co. It makes it easy.
I made that mistake once. It was like, this URL is, I was like, I'm pretty sure it's live.
There's some other ceramicon.com for some random something I don't know. It's actually in a different language, so I don't know.
The website's in English, everyone, just FYI. So that's how you know you'll be in the right spot.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Elisabeth, for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. Have a great rest of your week.
As Elisabeth said, if you are interested in signing up for Ceramicon, or heck, you're just curious, you don't know that you want to fully sign up yet, but you do want to learn more, well, it would be super awesome if you used my link to sign up for their email list. It's a little bit long, so I have included the link directly to it in the show notes of this episode. You can find those in the info of whatever podcast app you're listening to for this particular episode, or you can go to makersplaybook.com/podcast, click on this episode, and find the link there. So, popping your email into the form on that site isn't committing to signing up just yet. You don't have to spend any money. Don't worry about it. It just tags your email address with my name so that should you decide to sign up for Ceramicon in the coming months, there's an early bird pricing in January. It means that I'll get credit for your sign up, which helps me cover a little bit of the costs of producing this awesome presentation, all about pricing for you. As you just heard us talk about, Elisabeth is doing an awesome job of making sure that the time and labor of the artists who are contributing to Ceramicon is properly compensated, and we are all just super grateful for that. Doesn't always work this way. So, speaking of support, this episode has once again been sponsored by Amico.
Hi, I'm Kara, content creator and Facebook wrangler for Amico Brand, bringing you ideas and support for your creative adventures every day. This week's episode is brought to you by Amico Brand. Find your favorite Amico glaze at your local distributor. Happy glazing!
All right, my friends, we have one more new episode coming to you next week before the end of the year, which sounds crazy to say. But then, on January 1st, literally January 1st, it happens to be a Sunday, which happens to be the day of the week I typically send out our photo tips email newsletter. So we are kicking off the start of 2023 with a massive photo tips email. You might have heard me mention it on Instagram last week if you're listening to this around the time it airs. I'm starting the new year talking all about glare. Yep. Like I said, it's going to be a huge photo tips email. So if you haven't already, absolutely make sure you are on our email newsletter list. It's free. You just have to go to makersplaybook.com/newsletter and pop your email in there. I don't think I have to explain very much how common, popular, pesky, annoying, and a continuous problem that glare is when it comes to photographing your ceramics. I'm going to be breaking that down in this first monthly photo tips email of the new year. So, one more time, just in case you are still wiping the mud off of your hands, go to makersplaybook.com/newsletter. And the link is also in the episode info, along with the link for Ceramicon. So wherever you're listening, find the info in the app, on our website, wherever it is, get on the list, and let's make sure that 2023 is the year where you don't actually pull out all of your hair every time you try to take a photo of work that's just come out of the kiln. Okay, sound good? All right. Until next week, my friends, go get back to making your dreams a reality. Because together, we've got this.